Next question, Mr. Secretary. I take what we do for our personnel very seriously, and that sometimes I know you have stated right here today, our troops are ready, they will do anything if asked upon them, but I think as leaders, sometimes we need to kind of protect them as well. And I worry about the USS Ford, which has now kind of been out there over 10 months. It's probably well over 300 days by the time it gets back to the United States. I just saw a thing today. It's going to be headed back here in a few days. You know, these people have gone back pretty much all over the world. They crossed the equator multiple times. But I am interested, you know, I'm sure that was not in the gift map when it was first assigned, when they were deployed. And so what were some of the concerns, you know, that the Navy had when you made this modification, when it was brought forward to you that, hey, this is what extending them out to past 10 months is going to do. This is, you know, both on the troops and on the ship. What concerns did the Navy bring up for this?
It's a very fair question, and I can tell you every week I stare at an orders book where I'm looking at troop movements or asset movements, and multiple times that included the Ford. And multiple times the operational requirements, whether it was down in Southcom or up to CENTCOM, demanded additional assets in real time, which through a tough decision-making process led to an extension in consultation with the Navy. Admiral Caudle and his staff, they fairly represented readiness trade-offs, maintenance trade-offs, which are real
what
things.
What are the concerns? What trade-offs are we making right here? I mean, really, we have 3 carriers in the area right now. How many do we really need? It's rather, I mean, you know, it's a great show of force, but do we really need 3 carriers there? And you got 1 ARG there and another one on the way. You know, this is going to set back possibly deployments later on. It's going to have ramifications down the road extending for this much. And not only talking about, you know, we had service members that were kept away from their family for almost a year. How many missed the birth of a child, you know, before, you know, extending them in another 4 months? We need to keep this in consideration when we kind of make these modifications. And I hope these issues are being raised when you do these SDOB books, right? And people are actually making these decisions.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses today. Secretary Hegseth, I really appreciate your return to warrior ethos and the priorities of our military. Merit over performance is how you win, and it's how you save lives. And your love of our military comes out in everything you say. So we really support you and your team and what you're doing. General Kane, your comments about being in the middle and being apolitical also saves lives. I think all of the fellow veterans in this room, military guys, would agree that if somebody saved your life on the battlefield, you wouldn't care if they were male or female, black or white, Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever. We're all Americans, and we're all on the same team. And we put our differences aside and work as a team, we can turn the impossible to a possible. We can be outnumbered and still win. So I want to commend you guys for supporting our troops so they can best survive. Let's see, the border. Nobody talks about the border, Mr. Secretary, as you say, but it's incredible what you guys did in just a matter of weeks. The missions in Ukraine, Honduras, I don't know any other military in history who has been able to successfully do something so complicated, but it talks to the unity and the teamwork of all the joint force and how well they work together. I got a lot of questions. I'll try to go fast. $1.5 trillion budget. In that budget, I want to echo what Rep. Jackson said about USSOCOM. We are often deploy, and we seem to be doing more with less, and we don't complain. And they won't be that voice. So for us in Congress, we want to be that voice. Is just take a look at the budget and see if we can help them with that. Also, I want to talk to you guys about solid rocket motors. I know that the Secretary of War, I know that in this budget we've picked one particular company that we put a lot of money in, and I think it's a great company, and they do a great job. But what is your plan to also have other companies come to the table to help us with a shortfall with solid rocket motors?
You're right on SOCOM, and we will absolutely work with you and look at that. On solid rocket motors, it's such a critical component. You got to go with your fastest runner to get caught up as quickly as you can and giving them incentives. But we've also learned on multiple domains that just one option means 0 options when you're stuck. You know, 1 is 0, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So we need multiple avenues on that approach, and we look forward to finding other companies that can do it as well.
Thank you. General Kane, National Guard. I'm thinking about counter-drone with FIFA coming up, Super Bowls and all these things going on. have you considered, and if you haven't, will you consider training National Guardsmen, send them to counter-drone schools so they can come back and train law enforcement so we can increase our ability to protect critical infrastructure?
Sir, for sure. They may already be doing that. Please let me take that one and come back to you. I know the Title 32 force, in advance of all the domestic things that are on the horizon here with America's 250, are looking at a range of capabilities. So if you'd be okay, we'll get back to
Thank
that
you.
one.
On Ukraine, whoever could answer this is, you know, they have 60% enriched uranium. They say they have enough to build 11 bombs. Even at 60%, is that enough to make a dirty bomb? Is that a yes or no? Does anybody have an answer for that?
I mean, I wouldn't want to state anything that might be classified, so I
Fair
wouldn't talk
enough.
about that in this setting.
And by the way, in World War II, a congressman was in a closed briefing and learned that the reason the Japanese hadn't sunk any U.S. submarines is they didn't know our submarines could go below 250 feet. So he went out to the media and told them that, and we started losing submarines and losing American sailors. So a lesson for all of us in Congress: be careful how we. So thank you for considering that. I would say this: if they had a nuclear bomb, would that kill hundreds of people potentially, thousands of people potentially, or millions of people potentially?
The history shows us what the lethal potential is of a nuclear weapon, and so you'd have to assume the higher end of that range, and given the radical nature of this regime and the likelihood of them to use it, it gives you a sense of the threat.
Well, I think the threat is too great to wait, and I have to commend this President Trump for having the fortitude, and the Secretary of War and the Joint Force for making sure we stop this threat for the world. Also, I'm a big supporter of the AH-64 Apache. I understand in operations Absolute Resolve and everything else, it's been very effective in countering drones. I'm glad that in the NDAA, we're keeping that program going. And I just saw that you're going to keep the A-10 program going. And a good friend of mine said, long live the Warthog. But if there's ways that we can bring some of the Warthogs back, and or are there any other capabilities that can replace the Warthog? I don't think so. Is there anything that can do what the Warthog does?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To General Kane, on behalf of myself and my constituents, we thank you for your service and your leadership to our military men and women, to our service members and the veterans that I see in our committee today. Thank you for your support of our great country. Mr. Hegseth, I hear from your officials in our briefings here on the Hill, and because I live in an Army town, I now hear from neighbors at the grocery store who are worried about our munitions stockpiles that are now down to critical levels, and they sure don't want another forever war. So, Mr. Secretary, first of all, talk to us about the need to renew munitions stockpiles, and tell us what happens when munitions stockpiles become depleted.
Well, first of all, I would note that, as you know, we give weekly briefings on munitions to this committee, so it's not something that's withheld from any of the members here.
We appreciate that.
But it's also a topic that isn't something that should be publicly discussed as far as any shortfalls that may exist. But I would assure you that there are not shortfalls that exist in our ability to execute the missions around the world. And the reason we're investing in the defense industrial base with $1.5 trillion is to make sure the greatest companies in the world, which have been falling behind for decades, are running faster than ever before to give us 2x, 3x, 4x of the critical munitions, your Patriots, your THAADs, your SM-3s, every other standard missile, and
my
Tomahawks.
neighbors work really hard to make sure that we can
It's jobs in
those
America.
goals.
It's
Right.
what our warfighters need.
So,
We're focused
could you
on it.
tell me why we're firing the people at Joint Munitions Command for no cause other than just telling them they're overhired or they're surplus employee?
I would
At
have to
Joint
look-
Munitions Command?
I would have to look into the particular circumstances of that, but there have been places where we haven't been moving fast enough with munitions, and when people don't move fast enough in the Department of War, we find someone else that will
I mean,
run fast.
this is Joint Munitions Command. I mean, your department says that you're prioritizing munitions, yet you cut 58% of Joint Munitions Command at Rock Island. But let me move on. My district is also
Munitions
harmed.
are not built by commands.
but
Munitions
they're-
are built by
they're the
businesses.
ones that are
And we are
going to
very
get
good
it
at
done.
building commands and bureaucracies and slapping 3- and 4-star generals in charge of things that don't move things any faster.
But
So
how-
our job is to unleash the
How are
private
we going
sector
to get it done
provide
if
these
we
things.
don't have Joint Munitions Command? But let me move on. We also have Army Sustainment Command in my district. Could you tell me why we're firing folks at Army Sustainment Command when now is the time that we should be giving our soldiers every piece of sustainment that we can give them?
Because as I've stated, the status quo at this department before the